There's a moment, maybe you know it, where you're doom-scrolling your phone. The sun's out, there's laundry on the floor, dishes stacked, text reminders popping up, and this low, guilty sigh pushing down on your chest. Everything you were supposed to do is orbiting around you, and you freeze, right there, scrolling, as if that next swipe might explain what's wrong with you. Here's the twist. What if your problem isn't laziness at all? Not a flaw, not broken willpower. What if it's a message from a part of you that actually cares? Adam Grant, a name you might know if you've ever searched for what makes work meaningful, once said that people don't burn out because they're working hard. They burn out because they're working hard at the wrong thing. That's stalling, those chores you just can't stand to start. Maybe they point to something deeper. The fit is off. Your mind hesitates not because you're flawed, but because, if we're honest, some of what you're making yourself do feels pointless. There's real science behind this, not just self-help slogans. Fuschia Sirois has shown how so-called procrastinators often aren't just putting things off out of laziness. It's an emotional thing. Tasks that feel meaningless or repetitive trigger this hesitation and the guilt that follows. Remember the time you took on a new project, maybe even something small, like painting a room, with a real sense of why behind it? The momentum showed up out of nowhere. No lectures needed. That's not magic. It's alignment. I know someone, Jen. Everyone called her lazy in finance. She'd spend hours doodling, her spreadsheet open, barely touched. But the risk wasn't her procrastination. It was how long she stayed trapped doing something that drained her. When Jen finally shifted, left that skyscraper, dove into art full-time, her days started at 6 a.m. Not because a guru told her to hustle, but because she couldn't bear not making things anymore. It's not just her. I've met students who dragged themselves through classes, sleepwalking, until they switched majors. Suddenly, no one recognized this supposedly lazy version. A spark flipped, their eyes bright, their days full. Makes you wonder, who gets called lazy, and who just hasn't found their piece of the puzzle yet? If you start tracing your own resistance, you might see a pattern. It's not the hardest tasks that stop you, it's the dull ones, the ones that feel like someone else's checklist stuck to your fridge. People sell the story that more willpower fixes this. Just push harder. But what if your mind isn't lazy, just honest? What if it's your own personal smoke alarm, going off in rooms that don't fit you anymore? This isn't a pep talk about never feeling lazy again. It's messier. Sometimes boredom is your compass, steering you away from what no longer fits. Sometimes you outgrow things, but you're too used to blaming yourself to notice. So now, picture the moment again. You, scrolling, chores whispering outside the screen. Instead of shaming yourself, try this. Ask, what if I'm not lazy? What if I'm just ready for something different? The story doesn't end here. That next screen, that next sigh, it could be the start of you listening, not blaming, for maybe the first real time. It's strange and a bit scary, but if you look closely, dissatisfaction isn't emptiness. It's your mind tugging at you, hinting you might be done with something. That's where part 2 picks up. So if you keep pausing, start listening. This could be the clue you've needed all along. That tension? Maybe it's just the space where the next truer thing tries to break through. No simple answers here. But that's not a problem. It's where it gets interesting. You can almost map it. Every time you stall, scroll, rehearse excuses in your head. Not because the task is hard, but because you just can't see the point. This isn't about laziness. It's the friction of living someone else's script, even if you wrote it years ago. Adam Grant once described how people thrive where their work feels meaningful, real, and connected. He calls it job crafting, reshaping how you work until it finally fits. Not just tolerating chores, but bending them until they matter to you. You see this in classrooms too. There's this study that stuck with me by Sirois, a group of students given piles of assignments, deadlines, and a timer ticking in the background. The ones who struggled most weren't just unfocused or bad at time management. The work felt like noise, no inner reason, just obligation. Their minds wandered for a reason. There's this myth that willpower is what separates doers from drifters. But honestly, I've met so many people who looked lazy on paper until one thing clicked. Suddenly, they couldn't stop working. It was like the problem wasn't energy, it was direction. Like a friend of mine worked in finance, dragging himself to spreadsheets, coming home wiped. For years, he thought he was just undisciplined. Then he started painting, first as a joke, then for hours after work, skipping dinner. He quit finance last summer. He's tired, sure, but he isn't bored. No one calls him lazy now. You know that dragging heaviness when you look at your to-do list? The dull ache behind your eyes, that sense of pushing your brain through wet sand. Sometimes that's your internal signal that you're done pretending, that you've outgrown something. If society got this backwards, if what you call laziness is just a body-level nudge towards something new, what else could you find by looking sideways at your frustrations? There's a scientist, Devon Price, who argues that nobody is truly lazy, only misaligned. Someone told me about changing majors from biology to theater arts. She spent a year failing to turn in labs, then suddenly she's running props at midnight with more energy than she'd ever had in class. The guilt vanished. Wrong room, right effort. This is the quiet revelation nobody told us. That frustration is feedback, not a personal failing. If something always feels heavy or pointless, or your body goes into melt mode when you face it, sure, dig in, but also ask if you're trying to solve the wrong problem. Grant's research isn't just academic. He found that when people adjust even tiny parts of their job, adding more learning, tweaking one responsibility, they procrastinate less. Not because they forced it, but because they cared a little more. Shift one small thing, and energy returns. What if you saw your lack of motivation as a compass needle, not a flaw? Instead of mustering brute force, open up to the weird, sometimes inconvenient message beneath your resistance. It doesn't mean abandon every task the moment it bores you. But if a certain kind of work drags you down again and again, makes you feel smaller, narrows your world, maybe it's time to stop dragging yourself and start probing for what lights you up. Even if it's inconvenient, even if people roll their eyes. The weird truth is, so-called lazy people are often obsessive, just not about the right things. Look at hobbies, obsessions, those hours lost to a rabbit hole of research or a video game. Where does your hidden effort go when nobody's watching? Forcing yourself to fit a mold will flatten you out. The finish line is moving, and every ounce of willpower you spend trying to override what your mind and body already know is misdirection. Effort poured into staying stuck. This is where it gets tricky. Most systems reward stamina, not honesty. There's more applause for the person who grinds out work than for the one who stops and asks why. But I think the riskier move is to start listening and trust. There's a reason you're restless. Remember, the trick isn't to label yourself. You're not lazy, and you're not a productivity robot either. You're shifting. And if you watch what drags and what comes alive, you might catch the next chapter breaking through. So, let yourself pause, let yourself fidget and get bored. Let yourself wonder what else you're built for, even if that question doesn't have an answer yet. There's a line between avoidance and a signal that you're due for something new. Not always obvious, I get it. But often, your body knows first. Patterns of resistance, old routines that never work. Sometimes they're a map out. There's no neat equation for discovering meaning. Grant, Sirois, Price, they all come back in their own ways to this weird, irreducible fact. Your dissatisfaction is personal. It's not something to conquer. It's a clue only you can decode. What does this mean for you? Don't just muscle through. Listen to the pauses. They're not empty. They are the doorway into something else. If tasks feel distant or dull. There's no glory in gritting your teeth through them forever. Maybe you're not lazy, maybe you're homesick for work or life. That feels more like yours. Sometimes, what looks like procrastination is just your mind wanting to be surprised again, to play, to care, to startle itself out of the old groove. That's no flaw. That's curiosity arguing for a change. You don't owe anyone robotic efficiency. You owe yourself honesty, especially when it means being misunderstood for a little while. So next time you watch yourself scroll and sigh and stall, try asking, where does my real energy live? If I stopped pretending, laziness or a signal? Don't settle for the old answer. You might just be at the edge of something truer. Try listening. That's it.